Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education Board Special Meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. The time is now 7:02. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, with me this evening, I have Board Member Howard White, Board Member Jasmine Pressey, Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, Ashley Goulias, Janine Randolph, Sherry McCready Pritchett. And I also have Dr. Alexandra Estrella and her cabinet with us this evening. And with that, I will transfer the meeting over to Dr. Estrella.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have two important items that we want to share with the board during the special meeting. The first item is a quick budget update to bring the board up to date to some of the conversations that have been taking place amongst the cabinet and the city, just to continue to work towards balancing our budget for the upcoming business meetings that we will be having at the end of this month and the beginning of the next. So I'm going to ask Mr. Esmani to join me for this component so that he can provide you a quick update of where we are in the process.
Hi. So just as the superintendent mentioned, we're ongoing now with the process of reconciling the budget. Reconciling means getting the 9.7% request to tie to the 4% that was requested, that was approved by the Board of Ed. As you know, in the past, at least for the past 2 years, this is usually the time where we also continue engaging with the mayor to look for alternatives in terms of trying to see how they can help us kind of close that gap. We're also following developments at the state level. There has been some special education legislation that has recently passed, and so we're monitoring that to see how that can help us kind of narrow the gap. But as I've shared before, the gap from the 9.7% to get to the 4% was just a little over 13.5 million. And so that's what we're having to contend with. But we have been having a number of conversations with the mayor and his team. These conversations actually started even before the board approved the budget, and they're ongoing. I believe the very first one we had with them was back in November. We had 2 meetings in November. We had 2 meetings in December, just to kind of give them an update on where we are. We had another meeting with his team in March. We had a meeting at the end of April. We had another meeting with the mayor and his team May 6th. And I believe the superintendent and the mayor recently had a conversation, and we're hoping to have a follow-up meeting, hopefully between now and next week. As you know, we will be bringing to you our next board meeting, I believe on the 3rd of June, is our final reconciliation to kind of share with you where we are. As the superintendent has mentioned, the schools have had to make some significant reductions. Reductions at the school level follow significant reductions that were made in the central office departments to get us to the 9.7%, as you recall. Even in getting us from the 9.7 to the 4%, they had some additional reductions that we've also made. During this time, since you approved the budget, we did receive updates on our insurance. As you know, we have 2 insurance plans right now. The state plan went up 10.9%, which the rest of us are on. The teachers 2 years ago moved out of the state plan to the Cigna plan. The Cigna plan has gone up 15%. And so those increases have also added to the challenge of reconciling, because even with the reduction in positions that we've done, we had anticipated with the initial budget projection saving about $2.3 million or so in benefits costs related to those positions. Recalculating those numbers with the added insurance cost, that obviously takes away from that potential savings. to the tune of almost another $1 million or so. So that kind of added to the gap in that regard. And so those are some of the things that we're contending with now. As you recall, when we approved the budget, the tentative budget, we were planning on drawing down $2.5 million in carryover funds from the current year, hoping that they would roll into the next year. Given some of the challenges that we've shared with rising special education costs, we're actually going to spend that $2.5 million this year. So it will no longer be available to offset the budget request next year. So that was another $2.5 million that we had to recalculate back into the budget. But we did share these updates over a series of meetings. We updated the SGC, I think it was last week, on where we are with reconciliation, because it is impacting some of our schools as well. But we will be providing you and the mayor as well with a detailed reconciliation and how we are closing that gap to get to the 4% at your board meeting next week before you approve the budget. So that's kind of where we are by way of an update with the budget process. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Linda, this is not for this year, but for the next budget. About the insurance costs, it feels as if they have us over a barrel. Does that put us in a position that we next year might be looking at other insurance sources, or how do you look at that? I mean, what is a good way to navigate that?
So there's two things. One is we work with a broker, an insurance advisor who works on our behalf, and they do the analysis, and the city and the board share the same broker. So they work with us and the city as well. But that is also part of a collective bargaining agreement as well. As you recall, with the teachers union, we would have to work with them as well because they are on this other plan. So we wouldn't be able to unilaterally change with any of them. But our broker is constantly looking and seeing what these rates are. Unfortunately, we will not know ahead of time where the rates are going to be. With the state plan, we don't necessarily have a contract, so we can, if we find something cheaper, we can back out at any time. With the Cigna plan that the teachers are on, we were locked into a 3-year agreement, so we're in year 2. We're starting year 2 of 3. So next year, that 3rd year would be up, and so that would be a conversation people to have with the union, but we wouldn't be able to.
But Cigna is not locked into any rate. Do they have a maximum? Each?
The maximum was only for the first year, which was 15%. This year, there wasn't a ceiling, but our broker was able to negotiate with them a max of 15 outside of the contract.
Okay,
And we're hoping.
noticed it was the same, it was capped, but they came in that way.
They came in that way. But we did ask them to not exceed, the broker asked them not exceed 15%, and they honored that. With the state plan, there is no cap. It's just based on experience. So.
One of the things that
Thank you.
the board can consider, we are opening negotiations with NFT in the next few weeks. So that is something that we can further engage and discuss during that process.
Seems like a good thing to discuss, given what the rates have been.
And for the public, it's not really a question, but for the public, can you explain again the differences that from past years to this year, the changes that were made with meetings, when you started, that we started earlier, how we've had focus groups and town halls, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out in the public's meeting that we're not having those conversations. And unfortunately, the public doesn't come out, but to show the differences and the changes that have been made this year.
Sure. So the first major change that happened was the Charter Review Commission. The Charter Review Commission included in the charter a September joint meeting to discuss the citywide budget. We typically had these joint meetings, we set ourselves, but now they're in the charter. So in September, we had the first joint meeting for charter, talk about the budget and what we're seeing in the budget. But what we did this year as well on the Board of Ed side is we did have additional meetings. We had community town halls. We had 2 community town halls. We had the first one in in October. And then we had a follow-up town hall in, I believe it was in late December, just before the holidays. So we did that. We have had joint meetings of the finance committee, joint meetings in the town halls. We invited members of the city boards to also attend those meetings. We have had multiple meetings with our SGCs. And as far as budget development, knowing that this year was going to be a challenge, we actually started this budget process earlier on, engaging with the schools, engaging with the departments, just so that we could give ourselves additional time. And so the budget conversation has taken a lot longer this year because we knew it was going to be more challenging this year than it has been in the past.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? I think one of the things we can do for the upcoming business meeting, we can bring back the spreadsheet, not the spreadsheet, but the PowerPoint with the timeline of all of the engagements that happen throughout the scope of the year, if that's helpful. Just to reiterate the number of engagements that happen throughout the scope of the year, because we actually increased the number of opportunities for community input. And every year we've made tweaks in how we further engage the community in the conversation. Our challenge has been that participation has been limited, and we're hoping that next year, now that people understand that this is our structure, that more people can engage and participate. I actually met this afternoon before this meeting with the Royton SGC, and parents were talking about what they can do to advocate, and or to speak to some of the things that they would like to see in the budget. So we reiterated the town hall opportunity and why that conversation is important, because it helps us shape the priorities for the budget. So I'm hoping that as I continue to have these conversations with SGC, PTA leadership, that the word gets out there and participation in September and October increases as a result of that. But I think that the public should know that it's a great opportunity for them to elevate their voices and highlight what they would like to see captured in our budget requests. And unfortunately, some people have not been taking advantage of this opportunity, and they definitely should.
As materials are being put together for next week, I had also asked last time, can we get the central office flow chart again? Just like all the positions, and just so folks can see just exactly what we really are trying to work with here.
Yes.
Thank you.
We haven't worked on those yet because of.
Oh, I didn't mean
we're
to
still.
tonight, just.
I think if it's okay with you, can we have that presented during the retreat instead? Just to give us time to put those together, because we're still in the midst of the RIF process, and that process will be impacting those charts.
Okay, yeah, so
We
just,
don't have to duplicate work.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I had a question. I remember a couple of months ago, the schools had to do their school-based budget and make cuts and everything like that. Do we have all of that information and everything in?
Yes,
For that-
that will be part of the presentation next week.
Okay.
Is there something specific that you want to see as part of our presentation in respects to that?
Nothing specific,
Okay.
you know, just that, you know, what the leaders chose, what positions that were priority, and what is missing. You know, would say me just personally would love to see as far as the mental health and social emotional, like what services or position is available at each school for that. I know a lot of that went away with the grants that ended. So I remember that part, but you know, what is still able to come with that, you know, after the other cuts and like where we are in the process.
So the presentation that we're going to be sharing with you is showing at the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools, what the reductions, what the total reductions have been by position title, and the total FTE count. We were able to identify some reductions on the local side by transferring positions to grants that were available that where we could. So it'll provide that level of detail. So you've got the
Okay.
total reductions, how much were actual reductions, how much were transfers to grants, and what the net impact is on the budget.
Oh, that'd be great,
We'll
thank
provide
you.
that.
And because you're still going through the RIF, you might not be noting which schools, right? With that presentations probably might not indicate.
We do know the schools because the positions have been identified. We may not know the people. So the
Okay.
people in any specific position may not be the individual. That's
Got it.
recent, yeah. So the position will go away, but the person in that role may bump into another.
Got it.
Any other questions? So one of the things that we incorporated last year that was unique to prior years was this session to provide the board an opportunity to see the draft goals and have an opportunity to digest the information, give us feedback, allow us time to process that feedback, make revisions, bring it back to the table at our upcoming business meeting for another review, and then engage in a second cycle of revisions so that by the time we have the retreat, you have a draft that represents what you really want us to focus on for the upcoming academic school year. So what you will see here displayed and across other rooms are the goals for our upcoming 25-26 academic school year. One of the things that's unique about this year and how we engaged in this process is that first, the cabinet and myself worked to identifying the priorities for this upcoming school year, aligned to the strategic plan, also aligned to the work that has happened thus far and the progress that we know has taken place. But then we added another layer of review and conversation with principals, assistant principals, and central office personnel. They had the opportunity to engage in a World Cafe experience where they immerse themselves in the different goals with colleagues, had conversations about the goals, provided us feedback and thoughts about how we could further refine, build clarification around the goals before we were able to bring them to you tonight to present. So some of the revisions also have infused in them the thoughts and thinking of our school leaders as well as other central office personnel. And one of the things that I heard from principals and APs was this, how useful going through this process was for them, because it allowed them to see more of the balcony view of what we're trying to do holistically as a district. But how helpful it was to provide input before the board engaged in the drafting process of the district-wide goals, which will directly impact the priorities that they set for themselves once you approve the goals. Because in July, they'll sit down and then work on their own personal school building and individual goals based on the priorities of the district. So we're going to go into a fishbowl that will be 30 minutes, similar to some of those that we've had before, but with some modification. The team will spend 15 minutes presenting the goals that you, I hope, have the opportunity to take a look at. And then there's going to be a 15-minute Q&A feedback where you will provide directly input or feedback about the actual statements, how they're written, or modifications around that. Or in some cases, just provide overarching feedback of, I would like to see more of this, or I need more of this, or I don't think you really emphasize this piece. And I think this is something really important based on a strategic plan for us to elevate in the work. I just remind the board that this work is guided by our strategic plan priorities, and it elevates the work, the succession of work that we need to do to continue to build upon what has already been developed. So I just want to remind, if we have members of the public, that this is a Board of Education discussion only. That if we have participants from the public just standing in the area and observing the process, that they don't engage in conversation or dialogue with the board. The conversation is between the board and the members of the cabinet only. These are the groups that we have set up. So Mr. Pennington, can you highlight the room you're gonna start?
Being 320, which is
So,
out of this room,
322.
322, yep.
so Diana, Mary Ellen,
You can change station too. You don't have Karen come.
okay.
Unless Jasmine wants to be all by herself.
We'll figure it out.
I'll go with Jasmine.
So station 3 is with Linda, Marianne, Allison, and you guys are in room
3:30.
330. So let's see.
Station 2 is here.
It's here.
Station 2 is here.
Yes.
Mary Ellen, you will stay with Jasmine? Okay.
And we're moving them during this time, right? This,
You're moving room to room because of this.
Everything's being up, yeah.
Yeah.
just clarify.
So Rob, can you go with your group? Sandra and Rob?
not yet.
You're
Good. Yeah, so yes.
You know,
Well,
yeah.
And then
If you guys can hear me, we can log off. Ralph said to log off. Thank you. If you can hear me in this chat, you can actually log off. We're done interpreting rooms.
they're on.
So hopefully, this overview of the draft of the goal provides the board with a good sense of where we are. It would be nice to hear just overarching thoughts, about what was observed and any overarching feedback that would be, important for us to keep top of mind as we think through for the revisions of our goals for next year.
I think, the overall review of the, outcomes and the goals for 2025 and 2026. I think, overall was great, but my biggest concerns was the fact that I just had too many goals. I think it's very important to just focus on the main areas that we need to focus on and go from there. I just think this school year, we have done a lot. We're successful in a lot of areas. I don't want to take away from that. So going into the next school year, for me, it was just too many goals. I would like to see 1 or 2 goals on each area that we discuss and review this evening and go from there.
I would just add to describing the plan for capacity and how you plan to execute the goals too. Cause I know I had a lot of questions who's responsible, who's gonna own this? Is it something you can take on? I know big picture, ideally, those are goals we want to happen, but is it realistic and how is it gonna be managed? So I would just add that, but it was great to see everything outlined and love the fact that we're still that you guys are always looking to improve. Taking the feedback of condensing and eliminating or prioritizing, allowing us as a board to star or label what is important and what's not. So it was a great workshop, great activity.
I think that we're working on a lot of really important stuff, and I know a lot of this, it is a lot of goals. I agree that it can be really overwhelming. I think, some of them are gonna be very internal. I would love to see when we do finalize them next month, the biggest picture ones, having a really accessible way to share those with the public so that folks really know the biggest picture things that are driving the coming school year for us, the public and families, with not all the education jargon that we necessarily have, but just very accessible for folks to understand and know what we're really focused on.
I appreciated, when I take a step back and look at the whole thing, the way that the portrait of a graduate, AI, and the literacy vision, all of these intellectual big forces that they're woven in a manageable way to me. I see a lot of teacher lifting up, teacher development, I guess you would say, but that we're all going for the same thing, that the students get really engaged and that we use the highest level of techniques, of strategies to help them read, think, and act in the world. One question that I'm grappling with, and everyone in education is grappling with, is how do we deal with a policy that we have to come up with about cell phones, about the thoughts of the anxious generation, how and help our kids not be distracted and be more human in their relationships. So I'm grappling with those things. But it was really a wonderful
thank you for that. But I just also say that I don't wanna oversee work, you know, where you're at either. Because the less it is, the better it is for you to focus on those things that is most important, and that's our students. So thank you.
So thank you so much for all of this valuable feedback. One of the things based on what I'm hearing in terms of condensing that I think might be the three largest priorities are the portrait of a graduate, the literacy vision, and the continuous work we're doing around SEL, because it would encompass a lot of chronic absenteeism, looking at students that might be becoming disconnected or disconnected, and how do we effectively support them in many different ways. And then also like thinking about the scaffolded work that happens in every department that might not necessarily be public facing, that needs to continue to happen, that we can systematically provide the board with updates through our workshop sessions. But I don't know, and we'll further discuss, I don't know, actually those three pillars being the biggest overarching goals of focus, because I think it encompasses a lot of the essential strategic elements that are in our strategic plan. Just a thought, just based on the feedback that I'm hearing around the world right now. Just something to consider, and we'll work to make some refinements to bring it to that level.
I see that also.
And as a final note, before I close, just a reminder that we have our annual first book event on Saturday, May 17th from 11 to 3 p.m. We're really excited. The books have arrived today. So we had the truck in and pallets being dropped off at Brian McMahon High School. So I'm hoping that we have as many families as we have in the past, or even more. And we're hoping for a sunny Saturday so that we can have all the activities that we usually do. So with that, I conclude the components that I would be presenting and turn it over to the chair.
Thank you. Getting back to First Book, for those of you that have never been to a First Book, it's an amazing event, lots and lots of family and children. Just to see how happy and these kids are so excited about getting books just warms my heart, because, you know, reading is very important, and you will see that it's not the adults picking out the books. You will see the children going from table to table to table, grabbing books. They can even pick up the bags. That's how they leave their bags. But it's a wonderful experience. So if you get a chance and if you can drop in for a couple hours, I usually stay the whole day and talk to people and help out. But yes, make sure you stop in and see everybody. It's a good time to also meet the families, especially from all different districts. So it's a good time. And thank you for everybody. I know it's a long night, a lot of information this evening. I want to say thank you to my colleagues, because this is, like I said, takes a village, and you know, just talking and hearing what everybody has to say, we learn from each other also. And with that being said, motion to adjourn. So, okay, Sherry, seconded by Jasmine.